I just want to point a couple things out. We're in 2024. This is the 21st century. It is time for us to be electing the President of the United States the way we elect governors, representatives, senators, mayors, everybody else. Whoever gets the most votes wins. We've had 5 popular vote losers become president twice in this century, in 2000 and 2016, under the creaky, antiquated, and obsolete mechanisms of the Electoral College, which is so subject to fraud and manipulation. And as we saw in this very chamber, the Electoral College can get you killed in the 21st century because it offers more opportunities to strategic bad faith actors like former President Donald Trump to try to revisit a result and reopen a result in an election. So we need to be moving forward to a national popular vote for election. We spend tens of millions of dollars a year all over the world teaching people about democracy, and the one thing they never come back to us with when they're writing a new constitution is the idea that, oh, you know that Electoral College thing you have? We think we'll import that to our country. We never hear that, right? So we should be able to learn from our own experience and from the experience of democracies around the world. I want to thank the gentlelady for yielding and for organizing us in this special order hour on the most important problem of our time, which is democracy. Will we have democracy, or will we lapse into some other form of government like autocracy or theocracy or plutocracy? So I want to thank Ms. Ramirez for her leadership, and thank you for leading us in that beautiful and moving moment of silence for the victims of the terrorist attack on our country on 9/11. So a true Republican president, the founder of the Republican Party, spoke of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's been the beautiful, tantalizing vision of America, but we can't say that's how America began. We began as a slave republic of white male property owners over the age of 21 years old. But it has been through successive waves of popular, political, social struggle and constitutional amendment that we've opened America up and come much closer to forming a more perfect union and reaching the ideal that President Lincoln proclaimed from the battlefield of Gettysburg in 1863. Still today, there are people who say on this floor, they will come to the floor, Mr. Speaker, and they say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. And they think that they've struck some kind of knockout blow against the overwhelming sentiment of the American people, including President Reagan, who gave a great speech in Europe about American democracy and never once used the word republic, but constantly invoked democracy. And yet there are people who say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Well, what's a republic? A republic is just a representative democracy, because you can't fit 300 million people in the U.S. House of Representatives or in a school board meeting. So we use Republican institutions in order to have the democratic will expressed. And if you read the Constitution the way I read the Constitution, the whole trajectory of American historical and constitutional development has been towards greater democracy, right? If you look at the amendments we've had since the original Bill of Rights, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment gave us equal protection and due process. The 15th Amendment said no race discrimination in voting. The 17th Amendment shifted the mode of election of U.S. senators from the legislatures to the people. The 19th Amendment doubled the franchise in America by giving women the right to vote and establishing their political equality in the country. The 23rd Amendment gave people in Washington, D.C. at least the right to vote for President of the United States, although not voting representation. The 24th Amendment abolished poll taxes, and the 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18. So the whole movement of our history has been towards incorporating, encompassing, and including people who had been formerly disenfranchised, marginalized, and excluded from equal political participation. It's been a seesaw struggle throughout our history. There have been always people who've wanted to revoke other people's voting rights, undermine other people's voting rights, disenfranchise them, strip away their ability to register to vote. Tocqueville said in Democracy in America that he observed that democracy and voting rights in our country are either shrinking and shriveling away, or they're growing and expanding. And I want to thank the Progressive Caucus for this session, because we've got to get democracy back on the growth track in America. We've got to get away from all of the voter suppression and interference tactics that we've seen grow up, at least since 2013, when the Supreme Court rendered its dreadful decision in Shelby County versus Holder, essentially decapitating the Voting Rights Act, knocking out the pre-clearance requirement for covered jurisdictions, saying that no longer did they have to submit voting changes to the Department of Justice or to a federal district court before they could implement those voting changes. We have since seen more than 100 voter laws pass all over the country, around a half of them in the original covered jurisdictions under the Voting Rights Act. We've seen new obstacles to voter registration. We've seen massive closure of precinct voting places, mergers of different precinct voting places. I just got back from Texas, where a group of students came to see me from the University of Texas to say this is going on there right now, where the governor has closed down a polling place and then relocated one in Austin on the campus of the University of Texas, away from a well-traveled thoroughfare, a big, bright building, to putting it in the basement somewhere else on campus. But these kinds of tactics are used all over the country in order to suppress the vote. And another important ingredient to democracy is statehood. That's how communities that have been formerly disenfranchised and subordinated have been able to lift themselves up. We are in the nation's capital, which is the only nation's capital on the planet Earth, which is not represented in their own national legislature. 713,000 tax-paying, draftable U.S. citizens are completely disenfranchised in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Senate. They don't have representation. If you told the people of Paris they could not be represented in l'Assemblée nationale because they breathe the same air that other people's representatives breathe, you would have another French Revolution on your hands. And when we passed in the 117th Congress the D.C. statehood legislation, and I was one of the floor leaders for that, I had the honor of telling the people of Washington, D.C. this: thank you for having a bona fide, real political grievance and not coming down here and beating the daylights out of our police officers the way that the MAGA mob did when Donald Trump falsely convinced them that they had won the presidential election, which Trump had lost by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College. No, they didn't come down and storm the chamber and try to overthrow the Constitution. They did it the right way. They had a statehood constitutional convention. They're asking for admission. We should admit the people of Washington, D.C. as an equal state into the Union using our powers under Article 4 of the Constitution. It's the same thing with 3.5 million American citizens in Puerto Rico. They should be given the opportunity to become a state as well. So we've got to keep the trajectory of democracy moving forward so we don't lapse into some other form of government. And this has been a tough time with challenges to the basic constitutional structure, presidential candidates saying, just set the Constitution aside. We saw a violent insurrection supporting a political coup in this very chamber. That is the alternative to moving forward with everything that we're going to be talking about tonight in terms of improving representation through ranked choice voting, in terms of campaign finance reform so we don't have money drowning out the voice of the people, filibuster reform, ethics reform at the Supreme Court, All of those things are essential, and we need the momentum of a pro-democracy movement to keep us from becoming like Vladimir Putin's country or Viktor Orban's country, any of those close buddies of Donald Trump that he invoked in the presidential debate last night, that he conscripted as character witnesses for him in this election. So we've got a very clear choice for America moving forward. I want to thank the Progressive Caucus for offering so much leadership. And we know that it's tough and it's a struggle. Frederick Douglass from my state said that if there's no struggle, there's no progress. The struggle may be moral, it may be physical, it may be moral and physical, but there must be struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And, you know, John Dewey said that, that there are no ills to democracy that cannot be solved without more democracy. Democracy is the corrective to the impediments to democracy. And what we're suffering from today is the obstacles and the impediments to democracy. But we've got the means and we've got the will in the country to move forward. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity, Ms. Ramirez, and I yield back to you.